Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, I want to open the show with a continuation of our focus on what is happening in Venezuela and what implication it has on the national scale and also internationally. Now, we want to look at the legal dimension specifically, and I have with me somebody who can do a good job of giving us an understanding. He is a professor of international law, visiting research fellow at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom, who is also director of admin at the Progressive Institute. I'd like to welcome back to Inside Sources, Professor Ademola Abbas. Prof, Happy New Year, first of all, and welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you. Nice seeing you again.
Good to see you again. So, we've been trying to look at this issue. I've spoken with somebody who did a study around the economic dimension of this. Then I'm going to talk to you as a lawyer. After you, I'm going to be talking to a diplomat. So give us your own take. What is happening to the world in terms of you have president of one country, a powerful country, go and even in their own language, capture another president and then subjecting that president to the legal system of his own country. How do you read this? Just to open up, Prof.
Well, once again, nice seeing you, Laulu. Look, these are interesting times globally, in global politics, for international law, for international community of civilized nations, as we like to call it in the international parlance.
Right.
They are very interesting times because things are changing very rapidly. And it seems that the law is a little now slow because you've got some players on the international scale that are not probably well seasoned in terms of playing by the rules that the global community used to play by. As a student in international law, we used to have a very catchy phrase to describe this kind of moment. We call it, international law in terms of perplexity.
Okay.
Every sort of, endeavor has its own perplexity. When there's a kind of, what do we do now? Tension. You look at the globe now, and you ask yourself, what is going on? Is it, Russia invading Ukraine? We've been in the war for about 3-4 years now going on. We haven't seen any clear pathway to the end of that war. Then suddenly we have U.S. attacking or invading Venezuela and capturing a sitting president, under certain justifications, as the Americans have put forward. We'll come back to that in a minute. So you've got a globe now that is on high tension. We've just come out of a massive war between Israel and in Gaza, and then you have it going on in Hezbollah in Lebanon. And we have the attack on Iran nuclear facilities, which might still recur. So, the whole of the globe now today, Africa is not different. I'm just sort of giving a kind of panoramic view. In Africa, you have, Niger, Burkina Faso, going out of it, and Mali going out of
Benin Republic.
We have to our own air force to go and settle down. So you can see a bit of one is afraid to use the word kind of a reinvigoration of anti-democratic forces, coming back to play, and we have more of that now in West Africa because we begin to see a reactivation of military coup d'etat in the West African sub-region. I begin to ask yourself, what is going on? And when you project that to what is going on now in the Americas, so to say in the Central and Latin America, with the invasion of Venezuela, you begin to wonder what is going to happen next. Don't forget, President Trump is not stopping at Venezuela per se. He's not talking about going after Colombia. Colombia is high on and that is just the beginning. And in Africa here, we know he's been also been having his eyes on a few countries in Africa, albeit maybe not to the, including Nigeria, maybe not to the extent that, he's done in. But you can't still call it. You can't call it because when you have somebody of the personality and the temerity of Donald Trump in power, you cannot call anything.
You cannot call it
until
it's never over until
it's over. I think so. It's a very perplexing time in global community for international law, for international rule of law, whether domestically or internationally, for multilateralism, pretty much which the world has actually lived very, very well on since the end of the Second World War in 1945. For better or for worse, people can criticize the United Nations as much as they like. But the truth is, international organizations are sometimes judged by their failure, not by their successes.
Yeah.
And that is the point. For better or for worse, we've been able to restrain ourselves from having a major third world till now. But the question is, where are we going now?
How long more?
How long more can we still hold it? So,
okay. For now. All right. So one of the things that I like to probe, about is, so when you have this kind of, you call it perplexity, tumult, and global tension of high, of high frequency, if you can say that, does it show us that ultimately law what's the relation between law and power? Because what I see here is that, look, the Americans can do whatever they like. Some people even said that, I think it was Professor Adele Jinadu or Ambassador Keshi that said that, well, the Americans rule the rules, and it's surprising that they are the one, breaking it. So what is what kind of international structure do we have for legality that we can fall back to in terms of perplexity, like you described it?
Yeah, look, that's a very important, very pivotal question, I'll be honest with you. In terms of what kind of international legal structure do we have?
Yeah.
Let's just take a step back before we even come to Venezuela. Okay. It will help us to be able to understand what is going on today very well, if we can remember for a few seconds where we are coming from. Basically.
Right.
At the end of the Second World War in 1945, don't forget we had the first one, 1914 to 1918.
Yeah.
A bit of interregnum.
Right.
Then 1939 to 45.
Right.
When the World War was ending in 45, we were concerned about the possibility of that war coming back. And we said, no, the best guarantee will be, again, to constitute an international organization, the United Nations. Don't forget there was a League of Nations before it.
Before that, yeah.
League fell apart because,
of course, the war broke it.
The war broke it, and, the League was...
The Americans were not even...
Americans were not there, the Russian and stuff like that. We went to the United Nations. Okay, we give ourselves the UN. Then we had a structure within the UN that was meant to guarantee international peace and security. We gave ourselves the UN Charter.
Yeah.
And every single state that was part of that system committed to not interfering in the domestic affairs of every member state. That is Article 2 of the UN Charter. That is the core.
Yeah, the thing was signed in the US.
In the US, yeah. That was the core, basically, of international law that will guarantee protection, that don't meddle into my affairs. There are only two exceptions to that provision. That one, if you are going to act in self-defense, then I can come after you as another country.
Of course, yeah.
Which is Article 51 of the UN Charter. Right. Then the second one is if the Security Council will authorize an enforcement action against a country, basically. And that is when there's no veto, when all of them say,
let's go.
Let's go and do it. And we had that one in Iraq,
right?
Resolution 678,
right?
In Sierra Leone and so many other places. Those are the only two exceptions to the international legal structure for conducting enforcement, basically, and for guaranteeing international peace and security. And we played by that for a long time, even including the US. To be honest with you, played for a long time until, of course, Cold War kicked in. Then when Cold War kicked in, we began to look for how we could sort of chip away a bit from Article 2. Let's chip away. Don't forget, by 1960, 60, 61, 62, then you had the Bay of Pigs, in which the US tried to bump off Fidel Castro in Cuba. It was a failure, obviously. Right. But then you had the interdiction on the IC, Cuban Missile Crisis, basically, during Premier Khrushchev's government in the Soviet Union and JFK, when Soviet Union moved missiles to go and position them in Cuba. Now, Cuba is right at the backyard of the US.
Right.
And that was within hemisphere. And don't forget, as far back as 1875, President James Monroe, don't forget, adopted what is later known as Monroe Doctrine, which is that the US will assert influence and dominance in its own hemisphere. And Monroe basically told Europeans, keep away from recolonize or colonize anywhere in the hemisphere. We will keep away from your own.
So, and that was even before,
even before UN Charter. That's about 100 years before the Charter. However, why I mentioned Monroe Doctrine, that Monroe Doctrine succeeded the Charter. It was carried over after the UN Charter. Now, that is even Trump is still relying on Monroe Doctrine to do what he's doing. Now, Monroe Doctrine flipped the Charter over by 1960. Began to interfere in Cuba, in other countries, in other Latin American countries. In 1983, you know what happened in Grenada? When the US woke up and said, you know what? We're not happy with what is going on in Grenada after they killed Bishop Morris, the prime minister, through internal whatsoever tumult. The US went under the pretext that it was going to protect 300 American medical students in Grenada, and it had the responsibility to protect its own citizens, just because, of course, it didn't want communism in Grenada. Went in and do whatever they want to do in Grenada. So, again, Monroe Doctrine was fully at play. And so what the UN couldn't do unilaterally, it hid under Monroe Doctrine. And also in 1983, it hid under the fact that the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States came together to invite it to join them to be able to house the government in Grenada. And we accepted that. Then fast forward, 1989. Manuel Noriega. Noriega was a strong man. He was a military guy who used to be in the good books of the Americans until he became the president. And he bumped off the previous president and problems started, basically. Then again, UN went in 1989, don't forget, captured Manuel Noriega.
The US, you mean?
That's right, US went in, captured Manuel Noriega, and prosecuted him and jailed him in America there for 40 years. That was the president of what is going on now, for 40 years. What was Americans' claim at that point in time? It talked about self-defense. It talked about the fact that Manuel Noriega was involved in racketeering and nepotism and stuff like that and all this stuff.
Similar to what they're trying to do.
So, again, it got away with it at that point in time. But when you unpack what happened in Panama and you unpack what is going on or what happened in Venezuela, in terms of international legal system you talk about, you could see a bit of difference in the two. At least in Panama, number one, Panama made a formal declaration of war against the United States. Now, we could debate whether that then gave the US the authority to go and invade it without being attacked, because what the right of self-defense says that you can only attack if an armed attack has occurred against you or if there is an imminent attack. So would mere declaration of war by Panama constitute imminent threat? That is $1 billion question. But you can say in the age of nuclear weapon, I'm not going to sit by and be waiting until you ask me. So now there was a scintilla of justification in Noriega's case.
Because at least Panama
declared war. And don't forget, even before that, they killed a Colombian-born American citizen and stuff like that and this and that. So there are so many conflagrations, so to say, that happened at that point in time. Now, fast forward in Venezuela. What do we have? And before Venezuela, by the way, let's jump. Look at Iraq. So I'm just picking a picture. Bay of Pigs, Cuban Missile Crisis, Grenada, 89, 90, Panama, then 90, the first operation Desert Storm Iraq, which failed. Then they went back a few years after, 2003, or thereabout.
And they got this, the UN for that.
The UN, they went in and cooked this fantastic, smoking gun and this and that, weapon. We know the history at the end of it. But what is important about that, about the attack in Iraq, was that America didn't just blow up the Ba'athist government of Saddam Hussein, put in Paul Bremer to actually run the country with other, cohort, guns like, Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney and so many other functionaries of their government ran the place. As they're now talking about running Venezuela as well. So you've got a historical antecedents that dated from the 60s, till where we are now. Then suddenly we have Venezuela. Okay, don't forget, look, there's no question about the fact that Venezuela had been under multiple sanctions from different US governments, actually. Obama sanctioned him, Biden sanctioned him, and before Trump, you understand. And Maduro is not Hugo Chavez. They're different ball game. Maduro came in, don't forget, 13 years ago after the demise of Hugo Chavez. Came in, won an election that was disputed by as many as 45 countries in the world. Never recognized that election. Even the one in 2024, just 2 years ago, was the same thing. Which was believed to have been won by the opposition, Rodriguez. But again, that is all in the air. But what is important for us is to understand the fact that what the US did was not just an isolated issue. We come back to the legality. But there was a long chain. Don't forget, in 2020, there was an attempt to overthrow Maduro in Trump 1.0 at that point in time.
Exactly.
And Trump was fingered at that point in time, and he's been talking about it. They didn't make any pretense about why they want to go into Venezuela. Venezuela today sits on 17% of world oil. It's the largest reservoir of oil in the world, and that is 300 billion barrels.
That's
of course. And they didn't pretend. And one thing about Trump, hate him or like him, he's very open about it. He said, you know what, we want this oil, and we are going to actually get it by force.
But so the problem, from the point of view of that legal structure is that So, and like you have very brilliantly articulated, what happened in Venezuela seems to be quite unique. There was a scintilla, with the Noriega situation of, okay, they declared war. Here, there was no such thing. So the question that I want to ask you next is that, and I want us to come back to the U.S. legal system, but before that, as people of the world, especially with the United Nations, is there anything in the conduct and practice of the UN Charter that gives, that recognizes this kind of situation and gives a procedure of what must happen next?
Absolutely. The answer is straightforward, no. No, because the US characterized a few days ago this invasion as an enforcement action, is what they call it. Enforcement action is not taking unilateral. The international law doesn't know about unilateral enforcement action. Enforcement action is a UN Charter language. It's under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter.
But you only enforce what has been agreed.
Precisely, which is why the Security Council will have to authorize it.
Yeah.
Even when you're an organization of, let's say, a regional organization that you want to take enforcement action against one of your members, you still need the authorization of the Security Council at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So look, let's call a spade a spade. What the US did was a pure act of unilateralism. Full stop. It was a unilateral use of force that was blatantly illegal under international law. No question about that. However, as you said, there was a scintilla of justification, so to say, in Panama. Right. We don't have it here.
No.
In the sense that nothing remotely compares Venezuela to Panama, except the issue of narcotism, you are a narco-terrorist and this and that. And would that give you the right then to go and capture a certain president and go and prosecute him in your country, in your own listing? So as far as the UN Charter is concerned, there's no doubt whatsoever in any international legal scholar's mind.
And there's no recourse in the UN Charter.
Well, there's no recourse because you want to punish. That's what I was coming to. When we gave ourselves the UN Charter in 1945, we entrusted the Administration of International Peace and Security
to the Security Council,
the 5 permanent members of Security Council. And it is much easier for the camel to pass through the needle eye than for the UN Charter to be amended. Because you need the concurrence of the 5 permanent secretary members to be able to amend the UN Charter. You can't even adopt any resolution to condemn anybody. If all of them don't agree. So what happened in Gaza? Do you know how many of such resolutions that have been vetoed by the US? So it concerns Israel. So the problem is we have a charter that is crying for modification, is crying for adaptation to the 21st century. The charter is odious completely.
So what would be your response if it is said that international politics, international relations is essentially about power?
But I don't think anybody is in doubt of that. Look, before we give ourselves UN Charter, don't forget, individual countries had the right to go to war. That was power.
Yeah.
If
you think you can beat somebody up, you just go beat him up.
Just go and beat him up. And you saw, was it Milosevic in those days who said that, kill one person, you're a criminal. Kill 10 million, you're a statesman.
Yes.
It depends on perspective. Everything is perspective at the end of the day. So power was wielded. And if anybody says, as you were saying earlier on, that might is not right, then you haven't got nuclear weapons. When you have nuclear weapons, might is, very, very much right at the end of the day. But that is a very cynical view of international law, and that we've given ourselves today. And as I said earlier on, look, at the end of the day, don't let's forget one thing. And people keep saying, international law is useless, UN is useless. UN is an international organization. It's not a supranational organization.
Yeah.
The difference is an international organization can only exercise power as much as it is given to it by its member states.
Yeah. Okay.
A supranational organization can use power beyond its member state. Yeah. And that is the European Union, is the only example we have. And that is when individual members of that organization agree to cede part of their sovereignty to that organization. We don't have that in the UN. So UN is, and for crying out loud, US pays 25% of UN's budget.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So look, who pays the piper? However, when we gave ourselves the charter, we entrusted it to 5 permanent security members that we hoped then that their leaders would be rational enough, would be reasonable enough, will have the good temperament to lead the world. The question is, are those qualities today approximatable to Donald Trump?
Okay, but even if you look at the Security Council, so we have China and Russia who are clearly, not comfortable with this. And I know that if they come up with a resolution, the U.S. is going to
veto it.
But they've not even tried to do that. What's your own reading?
Well, there was a meeting of Security Council on the 5th of January, and they didn't even come up with a resolution, and that was actually called at the instance of Colombia and Russia, basically. No, I think Colombia and China called the meeting at that point in time. Because obviously, look, France, UK, and US, they are in alignment. Even though the president of France has been trying initially it was against them. Now, initially it was, but now it's a bit, they dilly-dallying. But it's clear that at least the three are going. So who do you have? Russia is not going to veto because Russia did the same thing in Ukraine, basically. So it's like, smell the coffee. You're not going to be able to do that.
So I mean, I'm sorry for interrupting you. So what that means, therefore, is that if you have power, you can go and do whatever you want to do, because now Russia is going to continue to do what it's doing, and then China can go do whatever it likes in Taiwan. How does that shape out?
Well, and that is it. I wish it was that simple, Elaolu. And that is because there are other calculations that come into play. China will not just go and do anything we want to go and do in Taiwan, because the US is one of the strongest allies of Taiwan. So you have to think twice before you go to Taiwan. So again, in other words, what I'm talking about is that it is individual countries' national interests that dictate the nature of power and the use of power in international politics. So because US has done this in Venezuela, doesn't mean that US is going to sit back to allow another country to do it elsewhere. It is still the national interest of the US that is going to be dictating, just as much as national interest of these countries. Then the question is, who then police who guides the guardian? Where are we at international law? Who guides countries like the US?
Are you afraid? Are you worried that we may be heading towards the Third World War?
I think the only succor that any reasonable human being will have in the world today, to be honest with you, is that President Trump has just 4 years to be in office. But the question, I was chatting with a friend the other day, the question is, how much damage would that have done to the psychology of the world, to the coherence of the international community? Because it's only been just over a year, and look at what we have.
On the ground.
So you have a very interesting character in the Oval Office now. Rapidly unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do next. He's quite blatant in the use of power. If anybody could stand up and say, I don't want immigrants in the rest of the third world countries. What do you make of that? So when you look at the personalities, not just one person, the personalities, whether you are Vance, whether you are Trump, whether you are Marco Rubio, whatever, whether you are, when you look at the personalities governing America today, I think the only respite we have is that this is not the America that we used to know. And this should not be the America that we are going to be knowing.
Well, like you said, 3 more years of this. But before we close, I want you to now tell us, how does this affect us in Nigeria? And the dimensions of it. Should we be worried? Because, like my guest said on Friday, that these things that are happening, you have the Americans taking the president of Venezuela, capturing him, and then about the same time, helping Nigeria send Tomahawk missiles, to Sokoto, that there is a connection between these two things. That was his own argument. Are you worried in any way at all? Or how do you read this for us as Nigerians?
Well, thank you. I think the only worry I have about the implications of this for Nigeria, it's not about whether Trump is coming to capture our president or blow our country apart or this. No, that's not my worry. My worry is whether, as a country, we are reading what is going on globally in the way it should be read, to tell ourselves that it's high time we began to take some actions, in terms of our internal security, which anybody will be reasonable about, will be concerned about. As I said in one of your interviews I gave you, I said, we didn't need America to come and tell us we're a country of particular concern. We should know at this stage that we are a country of particular concern. If anybody is thinking, again, as I said earlier on, I don't want to contradict myself. You can't call it when it comes to Trump. But my sensibility is that Trump is not, I don't think Trump is interested in bumping off a particular government in Africa for now, in Nigeria for now, anything like that. But it's very concerned, he's very interested, as any reasonable human being should be, about protecting Nigerian lives, whether you are Muslims or Christians or whatsoever. You might say that Trump saying that, we are coming to protect Christians might be a pretext. Because if you are going to intervene in any country,
you've got to have a
pretext. when you are going to Cuba, Bay of Pig, it was because of communist country. You don't want it. Cuba Missile Crisis, you didn't want missiles to be stationed at your backyard. You understand that. You're going to Grenada. We didn't like the person who's overthrowing the government. We don't want him to be there. When you are going to Iraq, we just didn't like, what was going on with Saddam Hussein. So you must have a pretext.
Right.
And the fact that they have a pretext also tells you that they're actually concerned about what happens globally, about what people are going to say, about legality of their actions.
Yeah, and narrative.
And narratives is very important. So I think for us in Nigeria, we need to actually be more serious than we've ever been. And I think the federal government is beginning to realize the fact that it needs to up its game. And I think it's doing that in a lot of ways by spending more money now, hopefully, in terms of security, by restructuring the overall security architecture of the country, which is very important. And I mean, we've had attacks by American, in the north, targeting bandits. And President Trump said a couple of days ago that he wished it was a one-off where it might continue. But the question is, such things also can cause instability internally, even when you don't directly attack the government. The government should be worried about the blowbacks of that. And you're going to disperse, bandits, you're going to disperse terrorists. They're going to regroup. Look, make no mistake, this is not a battle that the US is going to win in a short term, or Nigeria will win in a short term.
Well, we've been fighting it since 2009.
That is true, but we were fighting it a different way that the Americans want to fight it now. And the point is that you're going to have new players.
Yeah.
Not only on the American or Nigerian side, but also on the terrorist and bandit side. You're going to have players, possibly you're going to have players now who are going to come in into Nigeria.
Since Americans
coming in, they say we are going to support our brothers in jihadists.
So in your view, as we close, the intervention of the Americans to help us deal with the terrorists, is it a good thing?
It is not a bad thing. And something not being a bad thing doesn't necessarily mean it's a fantastically good thing. But we do need help. Let's be honest with ourselves. We do. Whether one classifies it as a very good thing or bad thing, I don't think is important. Is whether is it necessary or not. And when you look at our military capabilities, we've shown continuously that we needed more to be able to, win this war against terrorism. Even the biggest countries in the world, the US, look at Afghanistan, how many after 20 years, eventually ran out of that country. USSR, before US, don't forget, USSR did everything it could do, couldn't suppress the Afghans at the end of the day, the Mujahideen left at the end of the day. What I'm saying is that even global, military powers, mighty powers globally have failed in defeating terrorism. Sometimes they've been in it for 20, 25 years. So let's kid ourselves. Terrorism is not something Nigeria will win within 10 years, unless you don't understand the international security system. It doesn't work like that.
But my point is that we've been fighting this thing, Prof, since 2009. We've done 10 years.
I understand that. I understand that.
We've done 17 years now.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand a lot. But what I'm saying is that we fought that war half-heartedly in the last how many years? Half-heartedly. And that was because as a country, we didn't really take that battle too seriously.
Thank you so much, Professor Ademola Abbas, for coming to Inside Sources. Thank you for the knowledgeable insight that you give us.
My pleasure.
And thank you for your voice.
My pleasure. Nice seeing you.
All right.
Thank you.